This episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast is brought to you by the Podcast T-Shirt Collection. Are you a lawntrepreneur and want to show your support for Lawn Care Nation? Well, why not sport one of my new podcast T-shirt designs? They're available on Amazon.com, and for you Prime members, you get free 2-day shipping. Go check them out at Amazon.com/shop/Lawn Care Business Success. And thanks for your support. You're listening to the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast, the weekly show sharing proven methods and systems in marketing, equipment, and customer service, educational and motivational, to help make your lawn care business an overwhelming success. Now here's your host, Julio Tomei. Welcome, Lawn Care Nation, to another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Julio Tomei, and this is episode number 157, entitled How to Prepare for a Commercial Bid. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks again for joining me this week on another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. I really appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week and downloading those episodes, as well as for your questions, your comments, your feedback that you guys have been sending through. Like I say, I really do appreciate that. And of course, as of lately, for the podcast reviews on iTunes that you guys have been sending through, I really do appreciate that. I understand the time that it takes for you guys to leave those podcast reviews, and I'm very appreciative of you guys taking that time out to leave reviews on the podcast on iTunes. It adds that social proof to the podcast and just lets other people know that the podcast really is valuable and is worth the time to download and listen to. So thank you again for all of you guys who have done that. Just a FYI as well, last week I talked about shutting down the mailing list and that I was going to, or the email newsletter rather, and that I would be adding those, the downloads that I had been previously giving away for free for people joining the mailing list, the 8-page landscape maintenance contract PDF, and then as well as the employee handbook and all that sort of stuff, that I converted them, or not converted them, but rather took the originals, the Word document files, and put them on the website under the resources page, and you can find them there now for sale. So if you'd like to get your copy in Word doc format of the 8-page landscape maintenance contract, that you of course are free to modify, customize, and use for your lawn care business. And as well as the 8-page employee handbook there that you can, which is another great resource there. It was donated to me by one of the listeners, thanking me for the content of the show, and basically said I could do with it what I pleased. And for the a few months now, I've been giving it away, but have now transitioned and decided to, have that as one of the ways that you guys can support the podcast as well, by purchasing that on the website. So if you guys are interested, you can head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com, go to the resources page, and you'll find them there at the top, and as well as all of the other links and stuff to affiliates and things like that you can use to help grow and build your business. A lot of the services and products that I've used in my own business, and it's a great way for you guys to help out the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast and show your support if the content that I create is truly valuable to you. So for this week's episode, I wanted to talk about a email that I got from a listener about preparing for his first potential bid for a commercial property. So I'm just going to play the podcast announcements, and then we'll get into this week's episode in its entirety right after this, so stay tuned. Hey guys, if you have any questions or comments about the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/contact. For you Instagram users out there, be sure to follow me at lawncarebusinesssuccess. And if you haven't checked out my videos yet, well, what are you waiting for? Be sure to subscribe to the Lawn Care Business Success YouTube channel. Now, I know you guys love listening to audio while you work as much as I do, so I've partnered up with Audible to offer you guys a free 30-day trial and 2 free audiobooks of your choice. There's no long-term commitments, and you can cancel anytime. And get this, even if you cancel during your free trial period, you still get to keep the 2 free audiobooks. It's a great way to try the service and to see if Audible is right for you. So why not give it a try? Head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/audible. Now back to the show. Okay, so before the break there, I talked about this week's episode being another email question that I got from a listener of the podcast, and it was in regards to preparing for his first commercial bid. Now, before I get into that, I just want to apologize in advance for this episode if the audio quality isn't quite up to the normal, sort of standards that I like to keep. It's been a really crazy week or couple weeks, sort of culminating with, a lot of busyness at work, as well as sort of the end of the school year with kids and summer vacation starting and all of that, and just a lot of running around. I didn't have a chance to record this episode in my normal home studio, and rather am recording this while on the road, just in between errands and tasks and stuff with the kids. So obviously not the quietest environment that I'm normally used to recording in, and there may be some background noise and stuff that pops up throughout this episode. Anyways, back to the episode. So this email that I got says, the subject was my first potential commercial lot. And it says, "Good morning, Julio. It has been a while since I've bothered you. From my side, I've had good contact with you every week, if not every day, from your podcasts and YouTube videos. You must have spent a lot of time on them, from planning to making to editing. Thanks for making them." It says, "I am excited and nervous again. I got a referral to meet with a car dealership manager tomorrow morning for the possibility of becoming the lawn care provider for this dealership. I have explained, pre-warned to the manager on the phone that I am also a solo operator and currently only have a 22-inch mower, but he still welcomes me to meet with him. He says, what do I need to prepare for a commercial job? Do you charge more for commercial jobs?" And then, he gives me the address of the business, and then has sort of some areas outlined with a sort of a satellite view of it, saying only the box areas require mowing, and that it's a 45-minute drive from his home to the dealership. He says, "If I charge 3 hours at $60 an hour, just like you disclose your price in the latest podcast, is that reasonable? Any ideas are welcome. Thank you and best regards." So with this, it can be very, I would say, a very difficult situation. Not because commercial bids are that much harder to prepare for, but more so because of the situation with this particular commercial property that you are asking about. And by that, what I mean is just the distance that you indicate right off the bat from your home to the dealership. You're saying it's a 45-minute drive from your home to your dealership. For me, that right there is a non-starter. I'm just thinking about my own sort of proximity to different areas. I've explained on this podcast in the past, how I just work in my own neighborhood in the areas around, that density is the number one key to profitability in this business. And you're saying that this particular dealership is a 45-minute drive. And first of all, looking at the photos, and I know if you're listening to this podcast and you have no idea about this particular property or the situation, basically the photo he shows is of an overhead shot of a car dealership. And it's not a huge looking dealership. And it's basically just some city boulevards on one side of the dealership that require mowing. And he's saying that, he wants to charge, or thinking if charging 3 hours at $60 an hour, would be reasonable. Now, the problem with this is that looking at, the amount of mowing. Now, of course, I'm not standing there and looking at the dealership, but I'm just looking at an overhead shot. But there are parking stalls, along these boulevards in the photo that can sort of judge, how many or how long these strips of grass are, and the width of them in relation to what an average parking stall is. And I'm looking at that going, depending, even worst case scenario with a 21-inch mower, it shouldn't take you longer than 30 minutes to mow the actual grass there. I would say it would probably take you less than that. Again, maybe, I'm just looking at the photo, so I can't really tell, but judging by the parking stalls and stuff, it doesn't look like there's much grass there. So if you're going to come in with a bid at $60 an hour for 3 hours, I think right there you're wasting your time, because the dealerships, they're just going to look at that and go, there's no way. There's like literally, 30 minutes of work here. If all this property entails is mowing just those few boulevards, maybe an hour at the most, if you wanted to push it. So, you're coming in with a price that's 3 times, at the very least, of what that particular job is worth. And the issue here is that you're trying to compensate for the drive time. And that's where it becomes a non-starter for me, is picking up work, or even looking at work that is any sort of distance away. Now, this is okay, if you're willing to drive, but you're picking up other clients, or building, a portion of your business in that area. If that's something you want to do, then that is totally fine. You can do that. But if this is the only client that you are going to be doing, then driving 45 minutes in either direction, I don't think you're going to have much luck, just because, like I said, you are going to want to price it accordingly so that you're not wasting your drive time, because obviously that time is money. The fuel it costs to drive 45 minutes, the time just sitting in the truck 45 minutes, and that's just in one direction. And then you're going to do the job and then have to drive 45 minutes back. But from the dealership's standpoint, they're not going to look at that and go, oh yeah, that's fair. We'll pay 3 times worth what this job is worth because you have to drive out farther. They're just going to say, no, thank you. And look for somebody else. And rightfully so as well. I think your biggest concern, wasn't so much that, telling the, person that you are, let me see here, that you are, you explained or pre-warned to the manager on the phone that you are a solo operator and currently only have a 22-inch push mower, and that he still welcomes you to come and have a look at it. I think what you should have pre-warned the manager was that it's 45 minutes away from where you are and 45 minutes back, and that drive time would have to be factored into the quote. I think that's more of a concern than the fact that you're a solo operator and only have a 22-inch mower. Because like I said, looking at the overhead shot of this, it doesn't look that bad. Now, like I said, I'm not there in person, but just judging it versus the amount of cars and parking stalls that line these areas, that run parallel with these areas that need to be mowed, it's not that big of a job. 21-inch mower is not a big deal. With something like that, it's very, very doable. But like I said, your biggest issue there is just the fact that you are, quoting a job that is that far away. Now, I know that when you're starting out, you have to take on jobs that may be, of greater distance. You're not going to immediately start a lawn care business and start doing, highly dense routes and super profitable jobs right off the bat. That part I completely understand. But, when I think back to even when I started 13 years ago, I only serviced my particular city. And it doesn't take 45 minutes to drive from one side of the city to the other side of the city. Even to this day, I am on the farthest side of the city that I live in. And if I were to drive to the opposite side of the city that I live in, at the most, it would probably take me about 20-25 minutes to go across the entire city. And the city that I live in is quite large. It's not a small little city. So it's, just that 45-minute tells me that you're probably going across sort of maybe city boundaries, going from maybe the city to suburbs or vice versa, that sort of thing. And for me, that is just way too far to even consider. I know that when I started out as well, there was, a few contractors that I met, and even still to this day, there are a few companies that I know of that work in completely different cities. They'll work in one city one day and, the next city the another day, and throughout the week, each day of the week, they're in a different city. This could be completely viable for you. This could be something that you want to do. This may be something that you need to do. But I'm just going based on my own experience. And like I said, if you're going out just for one job for 45 minutes, then, and you're planning on quoting and covering your travel expenses, I, would say pretty much guaranteed, almost guaranteed that you're not going to get the job. Because there's so many operators around there. There's so many lawn care businesses, over the course of a day. Think to yourself how many other trailers and landscapers you see. They're everywhere. So, it's not hard, for a business like the dealership to find a bunch of different service providers to get a quote from. And, those quotes, if they're, in the same area as that dealership, automatically their quotes are going to be a lot lower priced than yours. And right there, they're going to get the job. If one thing that I've learned over the years with commercial contracts, and is one of the reasons why I no longer do commercial contracts, was basically that I have found through my experience that the lowest price is always the determining factor with a commercial bid. Whether it's townhouse complexes, or condos, or, industrial, type commercial buildings, when they're looking for quotes, it always seems to, be the lowest priced bid is the one that automatically gets the job. And that there's no loyalty, as well, that every year that same commercial property will go up for bid again, and they will get quotes every year, and the lowest price service provider will get that commercial contract. So just something to keep in mind. Like I said, that's just what I have, gotten from the experience of doing this for 13 years. And again, that's what's led me to shy away from commercial bids. Partly, I've talked about how, I feel that I am, what they call, these days, with, kids that you see a lot now, they'll, say that a kid has been, he's ADD, he's got attention deficit disorder. And, I always think back to me going, that describes me. That's what I am. I cannot do, something for long periods of time, without changing it up, without taking a break. And that's another reason why I personally do not like commercial contracts. Number one was, like I said, when I did them, my experience was, didn't matter how good I did them, didn't matter how much work and effort I put into them. It was always whatever the lowest price was. I talked about one of the commercial properties that I did that I took over for another company, and that I was doing all this work, and they had some complaints about the previous service operator. And that I got in there and started, working my butt off. And I remember, I would get there around 9 a.m. and I would start working. And I was just a solo operator, doing this large industrial, sort of complex, taking care of all the gardens and beds and all that sort of stuff, and mowing the front boulevards. And, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, as the manager of the place would be getting off, he'd look at me and he'd say, "You're still here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just want to, make sure I'm, it's a big place. I want to make sure I'm getting everything that I want done." And he was like, "Wow, that's great." And, then a few weeks later, him coming to me and saying, "Wow, the owners of the property are really impressed with, how you've turned this place around. It looks fantastic." Yet, at the end of that season, when it came to the next year, they asked me to do it again. And I said, "Yeah, that's great. But I found that I was spending a lot more time here than I expected. So I'm just, I'm going to have to raise the price a little bit." So he asked me how much, and I told him. And the next thing you know, he's hired somebody else. And it didn't matter that, I had turned the place around. It didn't matter that, I had solved all of their previous complaints with their other service provider. What mattered was, that, I wanted $100 more, for that bid, and they didn't want to pay that. So, and that sort of scenario has repeated itself, anytime I've gotten commercial contracts. It's always the lowest price. And for me, always look at it and go, at least in my experience and with the types of residential lawns that I do, I always look at it and go, why would I do this and spend my time on these commercial properties when I can be doing residential homes and be charging a much, healthier profit on these jobs? And, it just suits my personality better, because with a residential home, I'm there for a shorter amount of time. I'm in and out. and it keeps my, ADD, as they say, attention deficit disorder, keeps that, in check, because I'm going from house to house. Things are always changing. It's always different. And it breaks up the day a lot, better for me. So I just like it better. I also like the, interactions, with the clients, more than with, commercial properties where it's very impersonal. So that's just sort of a rundown there of my sort of experience with it and what to expect. Going in eyes wide open, basically knowing that with commercial properties, price is almost always the determining factor. And that you have to be very competitive with your prices with that versus residential type jobs. So my advice to you in that particular situation, I know that this, you said your meeting was with the, in this email, said the meeting was with the manager the next day, and it's actually been about a week or so since I got this email. So, your meeting with this commercial property would have come and gone by now. But for the future, I would say, just, be aware of that. Now, if you're wanting to build your business, in that area, and it's a 45-minute drive away, I would say that's totally fine, but you are still going to have to be competitive in your pricing. And I don't think you're going to be able to get away with quoting for the travel time. Now, of course, travel time is always part of, your jobs, but it's usually absorbed by all of your customers throughout the day. So when you're bidding and doing residential lawns, you're working in certain neighborhoods and all that sort of stuff, there is that travel time, the gas, the fuel, all that sort of stuff. But it's broken up by, all of those customers. So in this scenario, if you're driving out to do just one customer, this is where that becomes a problem, because especially if you are driving, those distances, then, or spending that much time in traffic, it becomes an issue. I'll give you another example. A few years ago, when I was doing snow removal, I came across this type of situation as well, where I was subcontracted out to go and take my snowblower and go clear sidewalks for another company that had the snow removal contracts for a bunch of businesses. They had banks, they had gyms, they had transit stations, they had contracts for all of these places, grocery stores, to clear all the snow. And this company was equipped with bobcats and trucks with plows and all sorts of other types of equipment for clearing the parking lots. But they didn't have a lot of available manpower for doing the city sidewalks and walkways and stuff around the businesses. So they were subcontracting other companies, smaller companies like mine, that had snowblowers and stuff to go, take on these commercial properties and just worry about the sidewalks. So, we had a, price in place per hour for me to go and clear these sidewalks. Now, the issue became when here on the West Coast, we don't get a lot of snow. And when it did snow, traffic and drivers were just lost. They didn't know how to handle it. People are slipping and sliding. A lot of people wouldn't put snow tires on their car because we weren't normally get a lot of snow. So when we would get a heavy dumping, traffic would just be ground to a halt. So what I found was that there was some jobs that I was contracted out to go do these sidewalks, and they were in different cities nearby, like just surrounding cities from where I was. And I was like, it's not lawn care. It's just, 1 time or 2 time snow removal job in the winter, make some extra money. I'll go and do these. No big deal that they're, not in my, exact zone. But what I found was, because traffic was crazy, what would normally take on a clear day, in the spring and summer to drive, say 20 minutes, or, 30 minutes to another city, was taking 2 hours in traffic just to get to one commercial site of a particular bank that they, had, or another grocery store or something like that they had the commercial contract for, to go, snow blow their sidewalks. And then it would take 2 hours to get back or get to the next one because traffic was just crawling. And, I ran into the issue when I went to then bill the company, and they're like, well, you're billing for all that time in traffic. And I was like, yeah, of course I'm billing for that time in traffic. I said, I'm not gonna, if it takes me, an hour to snow blow a particular, say grocery store sidewalks or something like that, but it takes me 2 hours to get there, that's not my fault. That, it is what it is. It comes with the territory. It's winter time. That's how traffic is around here. That's what happens, right? So, it became a bit of an issue because, like I said, this other company didn't want to pay me to be sitting in traffic, yet there was no alternative. I had to, get to, those jobs. They were assuming I was, that hourly charge that we had agreed on, that I was going to be, billing them for just the, actual snow blowing time. And, I was like, yeah, no, that's not how it works. If I'm stuck for 2 hours out of my day getting to a location and 2 hours back, I'm billing you for that. And that's just, the way it goes. And in that situation, they really had no option, because it was winter. Those sites had to be done. They were under contract to, make sure that those sites were clear and safe. So ultimately they paid me, for, that, travel time. But, the next year going forward, they ended up just hiring their own, employees, just, taking on more manpower and getting their own snowblowers and doing it themselves, because then they could pay, some employees, $13 an hour or something to do that versus, what we had agreed upon, which was, a heck of a lot more than, that per hour. So, like I said, every time I've done any sort of commercial, sort of work, the lowest price, is always what, is the determining factor of whether, something, you get a job or you don't, get a job. So I would just keep that into, sort of advisement. And like I said, if you are willing to drive that way, and you want to build a business, like say if it's a really good, maybe a high-end neighborhood that is 45 minutes away, and that you can build a really good business. If you're working out there, you want the visibility and stuff, then that's fine. But I think you're going to have to eat, the travel costs of that. And hopefully make it up by, gaining more customers and more, jobs, in the future, that then, that job becomes, more, worth it in the end, if it can be bundled up with more, clients in that particular area, then it may be well, worth it. For me, like I said, I've always looked at that, sort of the distance and said, yeah, no, thank you. If it's too far away, even when, like I said, just starting out, that was the biggest, sort of determining factor for me. And like I said, I've known other companies that have worked in other cities, and, I knew one that had, contract with one company that had multiple locations, and they were driving a span of 6 different cities and suburbs, because this place had locations in each of those cities and suburbs. And actually, just to clarify even more, I think I've talked on the podcast about, one of my previous jobs was working at a vehicle emission testing station where I drove people's vehicles on dynamometers testing their vehicle emissions. And this was the actual business that I'm referring to, that I was talking to the landscaper who took care of this property back then, and this is before I even did lawn care or anything like that, and he serviced all of the emission stations. So there was one in each of the city and suburbs around the greater Vancouver, Canada area. So there was one in the city of Vancouver, one in the city of Burnaby, one in Coquitlam, one in Surrey, Langley, all the way out as far east as Chilliwack. So these are just like all of the suburbs and cities around, Vancouver, and it's called the greater, Vancouver area. So this one contractor had the contract for all of these vehicle emission testing stations. And like I say, driving from one end, if you were in Vancouver, which was like the farthest west, and you were driving through all those cities all the way to the farthest east one, which was in Chilliwack, you're looking at about an hour and a half drive. And he was servicing all that. And even back then, even before doing lawn care, I was thinking, that's crazy. Why would you, like, if I, was doing something like that, I would only want to do the, properties in the city that, I'm in, or maybe the next city beside me or something like that. But I wouldn't want to take on like all 13 locations or whatever it was at the time in all these cities and have to be the one that has to drive across all these cities every single week to do one lawn mowing in each city for these locations. It just didn't make sense to me. So the distance is your biggest thing. I know I've repeated that over and over again here, but that I think is your biggest thing. Now, the next thing is I wouldn't tell clients that you are new, or that you are a single operator, or that you only have a 22-inch mower, because ultimately all you're doing is going there to bid on a job. So, don't give yourself or give your potential clients or commercial bids any sort of ammunition to use against you, or setting yourself up in a sort of weak position that you're only this or you're only that or you only have this, because like I said, these commercial properties, it's almost like sharks smelling blood in the water, or a sick animal walking in the desert and the vultures circling up above. They can sort of smell your fear, smell that you are new in lawn care, that you're new in business, that you don't know, and they may try to take advantage of the situation, take advantage of you. So always go in with confidence and just, hey, absolutely, I'd love to come and quote your property, come and take a look at it and, see what we can do. There's been tons of times where, I go and look at a property. And like I said, the only times that I'm turning down work right from the beginning, is basically if it's something I don't want to do, like a type of job that I just don't want to do, or if it's too far away. That for me is, a non-starter, but everything else, I'm going to go look at it. If at the point when I do look at it, it's something I don't want to do, you're not bound by anything. You're not, anything like that. And there's been lots of times, example this past spring here. It's been super busy. And I believe on Instagram, I put up a short little video of a lawn I went to go quote. And this is one where the person was, calling me and they said, hey, we need somebody to do our lawn mowing. Can you give me a quote? So I went there and I was just kind of like in shock when I went to look at this place. And it was basically, a small little front yard. You open the gate and there was a little patch of grass on the side of the house, and then you go to the backyard, and that's where things kind of changed. You go to the backyard, you walk past this other gate, and you look, and there's a third gate that you have to open that goes down a set of stairs. And, I walked down the set of stairs, and then there was a pathway that went over like a little bridge over a creek, and then another set of stairs, and then a pathway again, and then a few steps going up to the lawn, and then it was a big lawn. And it was like, well, number one, the access here is terrible. At most you can only get a 21-inch mower because of the amount of stairs, and then you got to deal with all these staircases to get down. And I filmed a little video and put on my Instagram, sort of just walking the path and showing people this lawn that I wanted to quote with, right? And, that's one where a person asked me to go quote the job. I went to go look at it. And after I looked at it and saw it, I just replied saying, yeah, sorry, I'm not interested. I just said in that particular case that, hey, I work alone, and, it would be too difficult for me to handle these commercial mowers up and down all those stairs by myself each and every week. So I wouldn't be worried about doing that. Just don't give these too much information out about what you are, basically showing your nervousness about the job. You're always going to feel nervous about bidding jobs, particularly commercial jobs. So you just don't want to basically let on to that. Through it all, bidding, pricing is the most probably difficult part of the situation, because you want to be profitable. You don't want to work and have money invested in tools and insurance and all that stuff and not be making money. I understand that. And, still to this day, like I've said in the past, there's times where I will misquote, particularly coming off of the winter. When I'm sort of out of practice. It's been a while since I've mowed lawns or quoted a property for, the past few months. And I tend to give better prices because I want to, pick up customers, and I'm eager to start again, versus later on in the spring where it's very busy and I'm more strict with my pricing. So it's always an ongoing learning thing. I wouldn't be too worried about that. It's just the way that it goes. And you will, over time, get more and more comfortable and have more and more experience with past jobs that you can reference and know how to quote properly. That's, for me, how it is now when I, go and do residential, because I'm mainly doing residential. I can reference, the thousands of lawns that I've mowed over the past 13 years, and know by looking at it roughly how long it's going to take me, with the trimming and all that sort of stuff, and all of those other things that somebody new may not consider, when I'm looking at edging and garden beds, and parking, is a big one for me. It all factors into that sort of price, whether they have pets, which I know will be an issue regardless of how well they say they clean their yard of pet waste. I know that there's always going to be times that they don't, and that's going to cost me extra time. That all goes into my factoring of with prices. And, you will get better at that. But the biggest thing is to just, in preparation for a commercial bid, is just to, show your confidence, show that you know what you're doing. At least, as the saying goes, fake it till you make it. Right? Just put on a front that, hey, absolutely. Love to help you out. You've got some good preparation in advance just from your email here. You said you've talked to the person on the phone, and you were Googling their location, which is something that I always do, even with houses. When I have those online submissions that people do on my website requesting a free quote, I immediately look up their address. I can look at the overhead of their property, this sort of satellite image, and compare that to, some of the houses in the area that I may mow. So I already get an idea of the size of, or how much lawn there is to mow. I can do the Google Street View and look at sort of the front, which you can too, obviously. Looking at commercial property like this, you can look at the Google Street View, look at those boulevards, and get a sense of that. So you're studying that job in advance. You're sort of getting your, mind in the game. The other tip that I can tell you is always, even if I'm meeting, particularly a client, and it's a situation, maybe it's a lawn or something that I'm not too familiar with, and especially with commercial properties, I would never quote them on the spot. So even if you're meeting them there and they're walking you around the property and showing you, I would just say, hey, that's great. I'm going to go back to the office. I'm going to work some numbers and I'll email you a quote. Don't quote them on the spot, because you are more than likely then to misquote, because you're not thinking things through, and you're just nervous and all that sort of stuff. And you'll end up blurting, a price and, finding yourself in a bit of a jam afterwards. So always say, I'm just going to run the numbers. I'll email you a written quote with a price. And, I've never found somebody say that, oh, you can't give me a price right now or anything like that. That's never been an issue. So, do what you're doing. You look like you're on the right track there. You're looking up those properties in advance. You're studying the size of them. You're, looking on Google Maps, that sort of stuff. And, the travel time is the biggest thing. Like I said, for me, if I was in your situation, because of how I run my business, I'm always trying to just run, dense routes, and I want them near my, area that I'm set up to service. Any calls that come outside of that area, I'm just like, nope, not going to happen. Right. So I immediately just say, I'm sorry, your property, falls outside of my service area. Now, of course, when you're starting out, I've mentioned this before, you're starting a business, you tend to take on jobs that, may not be, the closest to you, because you're needing to build a business, you need to start. I understand that. And if that's the situation, just be prepared that, quoting for that much travel time to mow a lawn that maybe, to me, just based on this picture, looks like a 30-minute mow. But quoting 3 hours worth of labor and stuff, I think you're going to have a tough time at that. So, just my advice. I could be completely wrong. And, who knows, maybe you, like I said, this email came in a few weeks ago and, you were meeting with the person, you may have landed the job and everything's fantastic. And if that's the case, hey, that's fantastic. I wish you the best of luck, with that. So, other than that, if I was meeting with, the client, I would ask them, what they didn't like about their last service provider. I always ask that of my clients. If have you had somebody mow the lawn before? What did you not like about the last service provider? I also ask how long it took them to mow the lawn, or how long it took the homeowner. How long does it take you to do the job if they're looking for somebody to do something that they previously did? I've had one recently where it was a hedge and that they want done. And I just ask, hey, they said they've been previously doing it for years. They want a quote on it. And I just say, hey, how long does it take you to do this? And they said it took them 4 hours. And I'm going, okay, I'm thinking in my head, well, I know it's not going to take me 4 hours. But that sort of gives me sort of the worst case scenario. If a homeowner who does this sort of job once, a year, takes them 4 hours to do, that gives me sort of a worst case scenario of, what I could bid for that job and go from there. So ask, who they had servicing it, or if they had somebody servicing it, how long it took them, if they knew how many crew members they used to do the job, and just try to gather as much information as you can about the location, about where you can park, that travel time, all that sort of stuff. Put it all together and sort of get an idea of what you need. Then the other thing you want to do is you want to put it all in a contract, right? So that 8-page landscape maintenance contract that I have for sale on the Lawn Care Business Success website under the resources section. That's lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/resources. You can find that there. That's a perfect one to use for this type of situation where you can, open that up in your Microsoft Word. You can customize that. It has a lot of the details in there already for sort of a commercial type bid. And you can, customize that to fit and suit your needs. And then you can submit that to a commercial property, as your official bid. So just the thought. Again, I think that about covers everything for this episode. Just want to apologize again for, any noise that there might be in this episode. It's actually turned out to be a very challenging, situation here to record, a lot more challenging than I thought was going to be. There's been a lot of background noise. I keep having to hit pause every time, a bunch of traffic and groups of vehicles going by, I'm just sort of in a parking lot recording this and can't really control the outside environment. So I keep having to hit pause every time some cars or groups of noisy cars go by and having to restart recording from there. So probably another challenging, one of the top challenging episodes I've ever had as far as recording locations go. But, I'm committed to trying to get an episode out here every Tuesday like I have for the past 3 years and just try to make it work. So that's it for this one, guys. Here's to wishing you guys all overwhelming success and freedom in your lawn care business. Bye for now.